So I liked Arcane Season 2 a lot. I liked Season 1 more. That is the starting point of this video. At the end of this video, which is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one web design platform for entrepreneurs, I want to talk or rant about some things that have bothered me about the discourse about this season. But for now, this is my starting point. Season 1, 10 out of 10. Season 2, 7 out of 10. I was happy. I felt satisfied. I didn't feel like it was lacking, but I also wasn't in awe. It didn't make for a life-changing story. And to me, I think this is the most fascinating spot to be in. I know there are a lot of you who are like a 10 out of 10 for Season 1 and a 2 out of 10 for Season 2, and a lot of you love that whole 10 out of 10 versus 2 out of 10 conversation. I personally am bored to tears by that conversation. I feel like it just goes nowhere and I gain close to nothing from it. Good versus great is where the real learning begins, in my opinion, and specifically the last half of that, the great part. What makes a great story great? What brings us to that higher echelon of storytelling? That's my question. And in this video, I want to limit my scope, but not by much. We're going to talk about the finale. We're going to talk about the big picture. We're going to talk about some structural stuff. But to start, I want to frame this with Arcane's own principles of writing. That question in the thumbnail, where is the nuance? I want to make it crystal clear. That is a real question. It's not like an accusation. It's not rhetorical. This is a guiding light question we discussed in my 50 lessons from Arcane Writers video. And usually on the channel, we're all about ask what, not why. Today, we're asking where. So with that, I want to start off by comparing the Jinx Vi storyline in Season 1 to the Victor J storyline in Season 2. And we can look at the full picture from beginning to end of these arcs, the conversations, the framing, the beats, the development, and ask this question of where is the nuance? So Jinx Vi Season 1, where is the nuance? Well, we can start with just what is the story about? And the answer is that it's a story about sisters. The unnuanced version of the story would be sisters feuding, sisters who wrong each other, and they're fighting, and that's all the story is about. A level more nuanced, the sisters grew apart, they became different people, and they're feuding because of that. So this is a story about change. A level more nuanced, this rift happened as a result of shared trauma that both sisters have not healed from, and this is a story about trauma. A level more nuanced, that trauma was caused by the sisters trying to support each other in the ways they knew how. And this is a story about our understanding of loved ones not aligning with our love for them. It's a story about connection and its struggles and its triumphs. More nuanced, this is a story about the change that comes from dealing with trauma and the trauma that comes from dealing with change. More nuanced, concretize that with a framing of Jinx versus Powder, these two identities that highlight both the shortcomings and the strengths of how we think about the self. More nuanced, ground all this in a world that's going through social upheaval, political rifts, technological progress. And there's a story about change of all kinds and how it impacts every layer of humanity. And then even more nuanced, line the sister story up at the pinnacle of a dozen different arcs expressing parallel nuances about all these ideas we mentioned. Every storyline complements each other in multiple touch points and then comes together in one giant powerful explosion of meaning that carries with it all these different shades of ideas and emotions about sisterhood and change and trauma and connection and identity, and you could go on and on. Time, how we view time, self-love, acceptance, on and on and on. Victor J Season 2, where's the nuance? Well, what is this story about? What is it about? Can you tell me? Can anyone tell me? And I'm not saying that there's no answer to this question. Obviously, it is about something. It's just not straightforward at all. I still have not come up with a simple, unified answer to this question since the season came out. And that's after hours and hours of thinking about it, hours and hours of talking about it with tons of different people. And again, there is an answer out there. It's just really difficult. I watch the episodes and I'm hearing a lot of stuff about order and chaos and perfection and imperfection, and recursive impulses and fate and evolution. And there's this whole desperate struggle Jace goes through to reach his own corpse. And then we got the astral realm and sky and all these parallel realities of the acceleration rune. And so I'll bring us to this one moment, but also to the past as this one timeline in which, like, can I just know what this has to do with my life, please? And again, I'm not saying that there are no answers here, but compare that to, I see an arc about siblings, and I have a sibling. I see an arc about how people change, and I've changed. People I know have changed. Relationships, I have relationships. Trauma, I have trauma. Identity, connection, technology, social division, all these things immediately, like, reach out from the screen and grab hold of actual chunks of my life that I think about a lot, that I encounter continually. And they speak to me through all these parts of me. It's like multiple veins feeding me meaning through every organ of my body, instead of like one single thin strand of wire doing all the work. The point is, me personally, Schnee, I don't think about whatever this Jace Victor story is trying to show it's about. These grand esoteric philosophical questions about fate and order and chaos and what perfection is and what life is, and all these real dilemmas we see Victor actually struggling with, even the clearer ones. The way he's beginning to view the world, the way he's beginning to view people, life. I can take that all in, but it's not mainlining meaning directly into me through these important parts of my life. It's something I view from a distance and I can appreciate it when I can access it, but it's from a distance. Put it this way. I think for a lot of us, especially people watching content like this, stories aren't just entertainment. They're a vehicle we use to process our own life experience. Fantasy stories aren't just silly magic pretend time. It's giving an outlet to our grand ambitions, to shaping our ideas about what to admire, what to fight against, how bravery works, how cowardice works, what's noble, what's moral, what's evil. We watch romance movies and we relate to the struggles of romantic relationships, or we learn about them, or we see ourselves in the characters and their strengths and their flaws and their dilemmas. We watch dramas and slice of life and we find catharsis and relatability and nostalgia. We watch depressing indie movies and it helps us process trauma and troubling thoughts and experiences. Stories help us make sense of things, order things, they highlight aspects to think about, how to think about them. They provide models, they provide articulation, they provide clarity, they ask questions, they undermine assumptions, they uncover contradictions, they provide answers, question answers, and so on and so on and so on. ARCANE fully knows this. It's how the writers talk about the story. It's even embedded in how some of the characters themselves are written. Jinx sees herself as a character in the narrative of her own life, and she tries to define her role and her arc. She's living the life of someone who sees stories this way, maybe even a little bit too deeply. So an arc like Victor's about topics like this. For me personally, this is not my life. Watching this is not helping me process anything, or at least it's complex enough that it's not happening on first watch or on second watch or on third watch. And what I'm left with can still be a good story in and of itself, well told, well structured, well expressed, etc. But for me, that's where the experience would end. Compare that to a story which is all about things in my life, and that story experience is like it taps into my soul. And by doing that, it gains access to this well of deepest, most powerful emotions that are already there just waiting for an outlet, waiting to be transformed by art into meaning. And all of that is really what comprises my experience of this is great art. That's where the 10 out of 10 comes from. And if your response to this is, but Schnee, that's subjective, yes, exactly, you understand. And that's why some people love this arc. For some people, these Victor topics are a huge part of their lives. It's stuff they think about all the time. These topics that other people would consider esoteric and too abstract, those are the lenses they see the whole world through. For some people, they look at Jinx's story and they would see not a lot that's going on there that relates to them. But this kind of story, it absolutely directly mainline meaning into all those life parts. It totally processed a ton for them. And that's their lives. It's different from my life. And that's why we have different reactions. And it's beautiful. I love that. And just side note, just so everyone knows, especially all you Victor fans out there, all you Jace fans, it's very possible at this point some of you are feeling like I'm not giving your favorite part of the show a fair chance. And you'll be happy to know that I have had like hours and hours of discussion about Jace Victor since my initial reaction. It's still not something that I'm deeply connecting to emotionally, but I can definitely see where the meaning is. I'm starting to have some understanding, and that probably will be my next video. But even then, what I'm saying still stands. Literally not a single person I talked to felt like they had a firm grasp on what was going on in this arc. Everyone, and we're talking people who loved it, people who were brought to tears in parts of the storyline, everyone had aspects and scenes where they were like, yeah, that part, no idea what's going on. Sky, I got nothing. Astral Realm, got nothing. Whole ending, nothing. Echo's central part in it, nothing at all. And that, I think, sign is a related but different issue, and there's not much to talk about with this, but I do think the story suffered a lot for even people who enjoyed it because it was written to feel overly complex. This is something I've said in my methodology video and other videos. I really dislike this. There's this notion that the more profound an idea is, the more complex it needs to sound. The formulation of the idea has to carry the difficult feel of my own difficulty in understanding it. It has to feel like this alien transcendental experience of breaking through to some realm where, I don't know, nothing makes sense, but it sounds fancy. Like I said, I really don't like this. But hey, that's another thing that appeals to some people. It makes them feel like they've had a profound experience. But for most of us, we either hit a wall in our understanding and that cuts off further enjoyment, or we run into the Peter Griffin Godfather critique.
Did not like the movie.
What didn't you like about it?
It insists upon itself, Lois.
What?
It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
The media starts to feel pompous and full of itself, and that's a turnoff. Okay, so next topic, but not really. I want to stay on this question of where's the nuance and highlight a different angle. We've talked about macro, let's talk about micro. Let's compare specific scenes, starting with this.
I thought maybe you could love me like you used to. Even though I'm different. But you changed too.
Where is the nuance here? So there's nuance in how Jinx is expressing herself. The words themselves, her expression, her body language, the emotional energy of the scene. There's nuance in the aesthetic aids to that emotional energy, the lighting, the camera angles, the pacing, especially the music. All these decisions are made very meticulously to craft a specific emotional experience. There's nuance in the symbolism of what Jinx has done here, the specifics of how they built up this identity, how the scene built up this choice in this form. The way the setting brings out new colors of what she's going through, provides new vehicles vehicles for expressing more of what's going on with her. And that's throughout the whole series, but specifically in this entire sequence and specifically in this one moment. There's also nuance in the idea itself. This is Jinx expressing a realization of how she views the past, how she views change and its ramifications, how she views identity and its ramifications, how she views her sister and sisterhood. There's a lot being said about acceptance and self-love. There's a lot being said about human nature, both its volatility and its strength. And there's also incredible nuance to the viewer's experience of all this. Seeing this story, experiencing all this being expressed so deeply and beautifully, it produces a very complex relationship to the scene for most of us. A lot of complex feelings, a lot of complex thoughts, because this is accessing a world of already well-developed thoughts and feelings about all these topics that consciously or subconsciously dominate so much of our lives. These subjects are so close to our hearts, and our ongoing narratives with them are already so complex. Okay, so now watch this scene.
Do you believe in fate, Doctor? Our paths carved before us, guided by an invisible hand.
Not fate. Evolution. Nature's greatest force, forever in flux.
No. Evolution has a destination. Not to combat nature, but to supersede it. The final, glorious evolution.
Okay, I know I'm kind of cherry picking here, but tell me, where is the nuance here? So I can ask that, and okay, yeah, there actually is a lot of nuance, but mostly it's in one place. And that's what I want to highlight here. It's mostly just in the ideas themselves. These ideas that they're talking about, this topic, is a very complex one. The difference between these two models of fate and evolution, that is a huge topic, huge discussion. Victor's rejection of Singed's model of evolution and the way he replaces it with his own idea of glorious evolution, there's a lot going on there. You can hear it in the wording all over this conversation. These words are chosen very, very carefully. As carefully as the Jinx line in the season 1 finale. But it's to provide nuance to the subject matter that these two characters are discussing, to just the ideas. Is there nuance in the emotions here? No, not really, very minimal emotions. Is there nuance in what the characters are doing in this scene and how that's expressing what this means to them? Nope. They're just talking. Is there nuance to my experience of it? Personally, no. It's like listening to any philosophical discussion. And again, let me be clear, nuance is there. The complexity is there. But by having it almost entirely just in the ideas, it's not permeating the entire story experience like it is in the season 1 scene. Or like it is in many, many of the season 2 scenes. Jinx Vi season 2 is full of nuance scenes. Jinx Isha is full of nuance scenes. All of Jinx's arc, really. And don't get me started on Echo scenes. So much there. Heimerdinger scenes are bursting with it. Singed, like I talked about in my previous video. All full of nuance in the most emotionally rich areas, and full of nuance in the ideas, and full of nuance in the viewer experience. Again, subjective, but that's the point. So just to stop here and evaluate for a second, what we're seeing is, according to my experience of these two storylines, is that there is nuance in what we're comparing from both seasons, but the difference is where the nuance is and how accessible it is. If there are barriers for me to find even just what the story is about, if what it's about isn't important to me, and if the nuance isn't in the aspects that move me the most, like the emotional experience of the characters and the scene, then my experience of the story is just going to stop before I get to that nuance. And it's going to result in maybe a 7 out of 10 experience, just a good story, if that, but it's not going to move me. It's not going to bring the meaning that that 10 out of 10 experience needs. Okay, next topic, but still kind of on the same topic again. I know I just said that all of Jinx's arc in season 2 was full of emotional nuance, and I do hold to that, but there's a distinction here that I want to make. I want to talk about the final scenes of Jinx's arc in season 1 and season 2. Recap, even though we've been kind of talking about it the whole time, season 1, Jinx's arc ends with the tea party scene. We get all the difficult conversations between Jinx and Vi, between Jinx and Soko, the hallucinations, the accidental killing. Jinx makes that fateful decision of choosing to sit in the Jinx chair. She says the line we just talked about, and then she stands up, she takes the Hex Crystal, and fires the first shot of the war between Piltover and Zahn with her Hextech rocket launcher. Season 2, where at the end of the battle, Jinx and Vi wake up and they see their father dead. Jinx tries to get Vi to leave him to come with her to safety, but then Warwick wakes up and he's threatening Vi. Jinx takes action, throws Vander off, but he's holding on to her and she's holding on to Vi, and in order to save her sister, Jinx knocks the Hex Crystal out of Vi's gauntlet, tragic and symbolic, and she falls to her explosive death in the embrace of her monster father, sacrificing herself for her sister who she loves, and finally achieving the peace of death at long last. Once again, I have to say it, I have to be clear, both of these scenes are packed with nuance. They are beautiful, fitting endings to their respective arcs. These are both intricately crafted scenes full of meaningful detail, using every tool at their disposal. But I noticed an interesting way people were talking about the season 2 arc ending, specifically people who didn't like it. There's comments like this. Kill a character is a form of redemption. Heroic deaths, heroic suicide, dying heroically, heroic sacrifice, dying as a hero, heroic sacrifice. The thing I noticed was that Jinx's season 2 arc ending was a type of scene. It was a self-sacrifice scene. And Jinx's season 1 arc ending was not a type of scene. Tea party, rocket launch, war starting, that is a one-off. No one is getting to the end of Arcane season 1 and like groaning, Oh god. Not another macabre Tea Party chair identity self-acceptance scene with the so overdone technology development starting a war scene. Oh my god, get creative. Just change it up, Netflix, for once, jeez. What we have, to be clear, both of these are completely unique scenes, but this one is a completely unique type of scene, and this one isn't. Now, why is that a problem? It's not a problem. What does it do? What difference does this make? I see two differences, probably related. The first is a mental barrier. You see this with how people talk about tropes and archetypes and trends and formulas in general. Are tropes actually bad? No, they're amazing. Archetypes are amazing. Formulas are incredible tools. But when people see tropes they recognize, when they see anything they've seen before many times, they assume it's the same as what they've seen before. Their brain fills in all the details they expect to see and then switches off. I don't need to look deeper. I don't need to look for details. I know what this is. I've seen this before. We've all seen it before. So let's all just stop looking for nuance because my brain shortcutted to the end of what I think this is, and I'm just not willing to take more steps to figure out if this actually is that thing or if there are crucial differences. I'm fine stopping here. And granted, there are reasons for this, very good reasons. A lot of people use cliches and tropes and archetypes as shortcuts so that they can leave the writing itself underdeveloped. And also, even when the writing isn't underdeveloped, this is kind of just how our brain works. And that is a good thing. The vast majority of the time, we are correct. We have seen it before. So I'm not criticizing this process as a whole. I'm criticizing the self-assuredness of people who think that their intuition is always correct on this. I think that's the type of closed-mindedness that we probably all experience that you really got to be on the lookout for if you're trying to learn. But what this means for the writing is that by making use of pre-existing patterns, you are potentially adding brain off switches into your cupcake batter and just hoping that no one bites down on one. And maybe it's not that many brain off switches, maybe not enough to have to worry about it, or maybe they taste really, really good, and yeah, go ahead, enjoy chewing on your switches. But either way, if you want your audience's brain to be on, you gotta mix in some on switches too that say, hey, look, you haven't seen this before, there is something special here. Details that stand out a lot, or subversions, something that's gonna wake the brains up. Compare this self-sacrifice scene to the Tea Party sequence to an absolutely unique type of scene, and the nuance, once again, is gonna be much more easily accessible because our brains just light up when we're confronted by something this fresh and new. We eagerly jump to look for all that nuance. We want to take it all in openly and fully for what it is, and we encounter zero roadblocks. There are no preconceived notions in the ways that confuse us and make us stop short, and granted, this new thing has to still be good. If it's unique and bad, that would be a roadblock. But the point is, escaping patterns makes nuance much more accessible, and if the nuance is what's carrying your scene or your story, then writers will usually talk about subverting tropes as a way to escape patterns, but another method is to make something completely original. Very easy, right? So that is the next question, because this is of limited usefulness if we're just stopping at the final result. We gotta talk about the process here. Stuff like this missile launch ending, or the Jinx powder chairs, or the Tea Party as a whole, that doesn't just come from nowhere. You think about where that would come from, where it must come from, and it's not a complicated answer, it comes from Jinx. What's the climax of Jinx's arc? It's literally her ult from the game. It's Super Mega Death Rocket, it's Fishbones. What type of setting would fit a Jinx finale specifically? Super creepy, super dangerous Tea Party? That is 1000% Jinx. What's her final dilemma? 2 chairs at said Tea Party, lots of death on the line, lots of technology on the line, perfectly fittingly Jinx. It all emerges from the character. It's form follows function, or really form follows identity here. What would this character do? What would this character make of their own climax? It's not easy to ask those questions and make progress and actually come up with something this amazing, but that is what ARCANE does. That's where it comes from, the character. Contrast that with Season 2's finale. They also start with where the character was at. Jinx is grieving. She is lost and aimless after the events of Season 1. She has a death wish. It gets worse and worse. We see some signs of her having hope and redefining herself, but she never really fully gets past what she is, until finally we get to this moment she sees an opportunity where her chaotic jinxiness can save someone, can do some good, can finally allow her to be a loving sister. And in doing that and making that sacrifice, she can redefine her entire life in that way. That is just as nuanced of a starting point, but what that translates to is a self-sacrifice scene. And consciously or subconsciously, as a writer, your crafting of the scene will be guided by past self-sacrifice scenes you've observed. You're going to do the fake out, the oh, conflict's over, don't need to self-sacrifice. You're going to do the last second, monster still alive, monster clutching you in his claws. You're going to do the hanging on the cliff. You're going to do the tense moment of decision, the letting go, the music change, the slow motion, the sad crying close-ups, the peaceful feel of the sacrificer person's falling, the agonizing question of was it really necessary, was there another way? Oh, but it did work, they did save the person, and oh, they also killed the unkillable unkillable monster, and you'll leave the door open to, oh, maybe they're secretly still alive. So what's dictating the components that make up this scene is the archetype the scene belongs to, not the character it's happening to. Or at least the character is second priority here. All these elements are conventions that make this type of scene stronger, no matter who it's happening to. Doesn't matter who's sacrificing themselves, the tense moment of decision with the is it really necessary thing, the sad slow motion descent, the lingering are they really gone though. Whatever it is, all these conventions, you take any character doing a self-sacrifice scene, you do these things and the scene gets stronger. So what's the problem with this? There isn't a problem with this. It's not bad writing. Remember, our discussion here is about 7 out of 10 versus 10 out of 10. But that said, the way you're making the scene stronger, the ingredients you're adding to your cup, what's filling up the limited space in this scene, a lot of it's going to be stuff that comes from the conventions of this type of scene. It's not going to be stuff that comes from character, which means it's not going to be something that comes from an element of this story. And if you don't account for that, it will present itself. It will feel like every other self-sacrifice scene in every other story. Compare that to the Tea Party. Every vehicle used to express what's going on in the scene at any level is fashioned entirely out of Jinx material. The building blocks are Jinx building blocks. Not some general building blocks that can be purchased online and used for any story you want. They are tailor-made for Jinx character expression, for Arcane theme and plot expression, for this scene specifically and its emotions, its beats, what it wants to communicate. So if these building blocks are well made, and they are going to do that function really, really powerfully. They're going to be positively bursting with tools to express Jinx stuff and Arcane stuff specifically. All the nuances are going to be so freaking potent in their jinxiness and arcaniness. Arcane as a show somehow just happens to be excellent at crafting these original, fresh feeling scenes. It's what we've come to expect. Our expectations aren't just set at good, but Arcane brand good. We're expecting powerful scenes that feel like Arcane powerful scenes, that are bursting with their own rich, unique ways to explore character. That's what we expect from the story. We can go to any other story for slow motion falling self-sacrifice scenes, even good ones. We cannot go anywhere else for a Tea Party scene. And what we want from the season 2 finale is that level of scene that we can only get from Arcane. Not getting that, even if the scene is good, it's just gonna fall short. And it is a little bit unfair. It must suck for the writers to have their expectations set so high, but that's just the reality. A round peg just won't fit into a Squarespace, which is an all-in-one web design platform for entrepreneurs to showcase their digital identity by creating a beautiful website where they can engage with their customer base in a professional capacity. Squarespace, sponsor the video. Oh, I love these. Okay, so we're all Arcane fans here, and a lot of you are writers and artists and storytellers who probably would want to write your own Arcane someday. You have dreams of making something that good that's on that scale. You have work, you have art, but no real way of getting it out there or having anyone take it seriously. You don't work for some big company like Riot, so you don't have access to those resources, those people, and maybe you don't have like a really techie buddy who could help you with the tech side of things, or a marketing buddy to help you appeal to potential clients, or a design buddy who could give you a really killer aesthetic. If that's where you're at, then Squarespace is for you. Having a solid online presence is a huge step for getting this kind of career started, and you can go from nothing to a fully functional website in like the span of your lunch hour if you wanted to. With this web design platform, it is that easy. And their design intelligence can help you create that exact aesthetic that's perfect for you, and also just looks really legit, really professional, will impress your client base, and you can really just easily do anything you need to do on a website. You can post video content, courses, podcasts, whatever you need. You can show off your art, you can sell your art. Squarespace Payments makes it super easy to set up payments, and the best part is with all these design tools, your website will feel like you, without you needing to, I don't know, sign every web page.
A little egotistical, don't you think?
Go to squarespace.com for a free trial. When you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/schnee to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Use code schnee, get yourself out there, do your thing. Back to the Arcane analysis. I want to talk about something else that we really only get from Arcane that we didn't get here. And this is something else that just feels very Arcane brand. This is what we expected after season 1. In season 1, Jinx's arc was about change internally, and Vi's arc was about change in someone she loved, and Jace's arc was about change, progress, and technology, believing in it, and Heimerdinger's arc was about change, progress, and technology, trying to prevent it, and Victor's arc was about change, death, the inevitability of it, and also change, transformation, fighting against the inevitable, and Mel's arc was about change, the difference between her and her mother, breaking the cycle, becoming something better, and then also Jinx and Vi's arcs were about sisterhood, and Jason and Victor's arcs were about brotherhood, and Vander's and Soko's arcs were about brotherhood, and fatherhood, and daughterhood, and Mel and Bess's arcs were about motherhood and daughterhood, and then also we had time. Every character's arc was about time, about the future, and the past, and progress, and trauma, and accepting the present, and then also identity, Jinx and Powder, Zon and Piltover, the fox and the wolf. Am I Medarda? Am I misfit? Am I masked? Am I that man anymore? Or am I monster? What I'm describing here is unity, and I cannot do this for season 2 yet, granted, caveat. But again, even if I can at some point, it's still not accessible as it was with season 1. Season 1 felt immediately completely unified. When I saw a scene happening to a parent and a child, even if I didn't understand what the parallel was, it felt right because I could see the parallels. The patterns were so stark. When I saw a scene on the bridge, when I saw a scene at the last drop, or when the characters started talking about the past or the future, or when I saw certain colors or certain objects that the show itself let me know were symbols, it just felt like there were 1,000 little signs telling me, yes, this is all coming together. Season 2, I didn't see those signposts. We had the whole saga of Mel and the Black Rose and Mbessa, and if you're telling me that that story is about the same thing that Victor Jace is about, I'm just having a hard time seeing it. And I'm not even seeing the kind of clues that guided me in season 1. The parallels, the symbolic elements, the symbolic settings, the symbolic colors, and then the Black Rose stuff and the Victor Jace stuff is also somehow unified with the Jinx Vi stuff, and Heimerdinger Echo storyline, and Vander. I'm just not seeing how, and it feels like there's not a lot of guidance on it. There are some tools. We got the recursion thing. There's a focus on different versions of things. That's something. With that, we got a lot of focus on what could have been. We got the whole cog thing, the two sides of the same cog. A lot of the arcs are still about family, but then also a lot of the arcs aren't. A lot of the arcs are still about Piltover and Zana, that kind of irreconcilable difference, but then a lot of the arcs aren't. And there's some really abstract tools, like the way all the conflicts kind of get shrunken and minimized. There's the stuff about fate and evolution and the place things are headed to and the ability to stop that. I'm sure there is a lot there, but the writing just gives us fewer tools to find this unity. And without that, we're just left with parts of a story that are just standing on their own independent merit. And what that means, once again, is that we're not at zero. We're not left with nothing. We're left with, at most, good pieces, just not a good whole. So that unity aspect is one major thing I think is missing from season 2. But there's another type of unity that was also super different between the two seasons. Season 1 ended in this moment. In this one scene, we had the end to Soko's arc, and Jinx's arc, and Vi's arc, and Kate's arc, and Mel's arc, and Jace's arc, and Victor's arc, and even Mbessa's arc. Season 1 had 3 major plot lines: the sisters, the weaponization of Hextech, and the threat of war between Zahn and Piltover. And this one scene, Jinx ends all 3 plot lines. She chooses to leave her sister by firing a Hextech rocket at the council chamber as it votes for peace. And these 3 plots, by the way, were also very tightly interwoven throughout the entire season. It was Jinx's attachment to Vi that led her to mess up with Soko, and then try to redeem herself by stealing the Hex Crystal, which prompted conflict between Piltover and Zahn, eventually causing Jace to meet up with Soko and offer a deal that demanded Soko give up Jinx, which is what Jace and the council were voting on in the end, and also what made Jinx kidnap Soko and do the Tea Party in the first place. So it was all this whole time super integrated. We also have Arcane's major thematic questions. Can we put aside the past and accept the present? That's answered right here in multiple ways. Can we move beyond differences and come together? Answer right here in multiple ways. Is change inevitable? Answered right here in multiple ways. It all comes down to this one pivotal decision, the decision of the story. It is the main character making that decision, exercising her agency, and single-handedly, simultaneously tying up every single thread in the whole tapestry of the season's story. Season 2, that's just not the case. The battle as a whole is where almost everything ends, but we got Jace, Victor, and Echo's arcs ending over here, roughly, and then Vi and Jinx's end here in their own little scene, and then Mel and Mbessa's ended back here, and then Heimerlinger's arc ended all the way back here, and then Kate and Vi's arc end way after the scene. And they're all related, they are integrated, but it's not that one singularly pivotal scene like we got in season 1, where everything came together all at once. And the season just didn't have the setup where the whole story builds to one crucial decision of the main character. Jinx and Vi's sister storyline kind of felt like it was playing second fiddle to Jace, Victor, and Mbessa's in a plot sense. And yes, they were at the war, but the climax didn't hinge directly on sisterhood. That was just one aspect, compared to season 1's Missile Launch Tea Party climax, which hinged directly, solely, decisively on sisterhood. So what that meant was, again, we can have very, very good individual pieces, but it's just gonna lack the power of a unified whole. There's a special feeling of beauty when all the threads converge into one, and that just wasn't this season's ending. Okay, so to sum up, back to the original question. What have we learned about what makes the difference between a 7 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10 story? And this is not the definitive answer to that question, but I'd say we found 2 major contributing factors. Nuance itself can get you to a 7, highly accessible nuance can take you to a 10. And that accessibility takes the form of clarity in what your story is about, address meaning where you put the nuance. Is it only in like the ideas, or is it in the more accessible parts of the scene like the emotions and the expression and the experience? Form is another factor, how unique and tailor-made the form of specific elements is to that story, or whether you're making use of an archetype in a way that could switch your audience's brains off because they think they've seen it before. And number 2 is your story brand goodness. In Arcane, we got the standard of Arcane good, which means a high level of originality and freshness and character focus in its scenes. We want, and we've come on to expect an experience of potent character exploration in forms that flow from the character themselves, giving us a story experience that feels new, and then also unity. Every arc, every big moment, every relationship overlapping with parallels and shared themes, making it feel like it's all super cohesive, like it's giving us this profound, multifaceted message about a few big ideas, and then also unity in how it all comes together in the end. That structure and the beautiful catharsis that comes with it. There is a lot more to talk about with the differences in writing between the two seasons, but these were the elements I found most interesting. These were the ones I wanted to talk about the most. Okay, now, rant time.
I got a lot of problems with you people!
Okay, so point number one, guys, I like the season. It's a really weird place I found myself in as this YouTuber, and I guess especially this kind of YouTuber who functions as like a voice to help people articulate their feelings on like pieces of media. If you love something, some character, some scene, some show, some movie, you watch a video like mine, you hear me formulate or give foundation to some vague but strong feelings you've had. And that's great. And then, now, some of you come to a story that you've had strong feelings about, and your voice is saying the wrong thing. And it's like, Schnee, say the right thing. Why are you not saying the thing you're supposed to say? So this is maybe going to be my version of the infamous Ludwig I'm not your friend video. I'm not your voice. I'm my voice. I've gotten comments like, why are you hiding the fact that you really hated this season? Why are you ignoring? Why are you avoiding? And that's not what this is. Realize you're projecting and stop doing it. And to be clear, I'm not angry about this. I just don't want this to be a barrier between people and what I have to offer as a content creator. And I think a lot of you also, by the way, just haven't heard or won't accept that I have absolutely zero attention span for media I don't like. It bores me to death, and I also just think it's virtually useless to think about. It is a really inefficient way to learn about writing. So unless I find some angle that's interesting to me or teaches me something, I'm just not going to put myself through that. Even if I think there are problems, even if I think there's a lot of other people who would want to learn from those problems, I'm just not going to do it. I love that other people have joined me on this journey to learn more about the craft of writing, but this channel has always been about my journey and understanding media that I love. I wish you all the best of luck in your own journeys, but I'm always going to prioritize selfishly what I think is going to help me the most to become a great writer. Anyway, point number two. Some Schnee story time. I had a formative experience as a 10th grader. I had this brilliant English teacher. Let's call him Dr. Eastwood. Dr. Clint Eastwood. He was a cowboy, actually. Anyway, so I used to assign these theme essays, and they're really great assignments. They're really, really tough. It was an extremely specific and nuanced type of theme that he was going for, and he had a maximum word limit that was always like slightly under what the assignment actually needed. So he had to be like extremely concise while still using like 20 quotations to prove your theme from across the whole book. You just could not waste space at all, and you're probably still seeing the influence of these essays on my YouTube channel now. Anyway, they're really difficult assignments, and one of the essays that he assigned was on this book. And it was a book that I tried my best to get through, and it was a slog. It was so boring. It was slow. There was just so little that kept me going. I had a really terrible time getting through it. And when I turned in the essay, I mentioned to him very like timidly, like, I was just wondering because I had like a really hard time getting through the book, so like, why? And he was like, I agree. The book was not a good book, but it was great for the assignment. And he was right. For this specific type of theme and this specific type of assignment, the book was really well themed. It was beautifully constructed. There's lots and lots of thought and intentionality, crystal clear levels of understanding at just like every stage of depth that you wanted to go. The story sucked, but it was deep. It was just dull scenes. It was just boring characters, boring writing. But that didn't stop there from being themes and being meaning and being all these interesting ideas, which was a bit of a revelation for me. You had intentionality and nuance in a dull, boring story that I hated. And it's because those are two different questions. Is it good? And is there depth and intentionality there? It can be your favorite story and have depth, or it can be dull and boring and awful and also have depth. But people still operate under this assumption that's really bizarre if you think about it, that if I liked it, it's deep, and if I didn't like it, it's shallow. Or alternatively, if I find a flaw, it means there was no thought behind any of it. Even the things that might seem deep, nope, impossible, because look, there's a mistake. And if they made a mistake, that means that they're unintelligent and shallow. And a deep thing that you can use your intelligence to find the meaning of just cannot come from a shallow, unintelligent person. Which I've proven this person to be because intelligent people don't produce work that has a single flaw in it, obviously. Okay, and yeah, granted, I am obviously exaggerating a bit, and also obviously run from this mindset before it stops you from learning anything ever again. But to be more detailed about it, number one, a flaw, even a major flaw, is no indication about anything about the level of depth or intentionality in the rest of the work. You can say that a flaw made you lose interest in investigating further, but that's on you. And number two, flaw? Are you sure? Are you sure you're not being sloppy in that area of thinking too? Are you sure it's not just something that didn't resonate with you personally, but it did resonate with someone else? Are you sure it's not something that actually does make sense, but you're not willing to afford the respect to think it through? Again, you can say that you're not interested in understanding reactions that are different from yours, but that's on you. That's what I think. So what is the actual rule? How do you know if things are deep or if they're shallow? And I have two ways of answering that. Number one is look. How do you know? You look and you use your brain, you work really hard, and you figure out if there's something there. And you talk to people and you try to understand if someone else found something in it. And if you can't find anything, then you say you can't find anything. Number two is similar to the mistaken assumption, but it's not if I liked it, there's depth there. If I didn't like it, it's shallow. It's if I liked it, there's depth there. And if I didn't like it, there's also depth there. How do you know if there's depth? Newsflash, there's always depth because human experience is deep. That is my actual position. If you had a strong response, positive or negative, to anything, there's always more to dig into there. And if you had a weak response, you can always dig deeper into that too. Sometimes that depth will be in the media and sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll have nothing to do with the media, it'll just be something that you free associate to. And in that case, there's still gonna be depth. It's just gonna be depth in your psychology or depth in your life, how your life works. And my channel tries to find the depth that's in the media, but there's always depth if you just keep looking. And you can disagree with that, but that's my experience, that is my worldview. Point number 3. I think for a lot of people, not being what I expected equals being flawed and valueless. And that can be on like a whole story level. It's not the story that I expected. It can be on a character arc angle, like Jinx's vibe went a different direction than I expected it to. Or it can be on a scene level. These emotions don't feel like what I expected to feel in the scene. But once it's not what I was expecting, or the way that it's usually formulated, once it's not what it should be, then it is worthless and I won't even look at it. And I can sympathize with that feeling, but you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to enjoy something you didn't expect. And also to learn something from a perspective that clearly isn't yours. That is a fantastic opportunity. And also, it's just sloppy thinking. It's, I ordered a Coke and they gave me a Sprite, therefore Sprite is tasteless. And you can still want the Coke, and also acknowledge that what you got still has flavor, just not the flavor that you expected, or not the flavor you wanted, or not the flavor you like. And I know no one thinks they're saying this. I don't think I'm saying this when I absolutely do this. What everyone thinks they're saying is that it's not my expectations, and also, unrelated, I think this version is terrible. And sometimes you might be right, and sometimes that is what you're saying, but every time I have a conversation that's coming from this angle, I just see very little effort put into tasting the Sprite, so to speak. Okay, that's it. We'll stop here. I don't do this very often, so I hope you guys enjoyed the rant. Subscribe. What did you guys think of Season 2? Side note, there are probably some parts of this video where I called something nuanced and I didn't go fully into what was nuanced about it, or what I believed was nuanced about it. And that was me just trying to keep to the topic of the difference between the 7 and the 10. This video was not intended to be like defending X or Y or proving X or Y. But if you want me to explain some of those points, some of the nuance that I see, you can ask in the comments. I'll do my best to address anything major. There's still more to explore in the Season 1 versus Season 2 discussion. I'm still not sure if Part 2 of this video will materialize at some point, but maybe, I don't know, something addressing the pacing or Isha or the music use or people's problems with Jinx Vi. All possible topics. Let me know what you'd be most interested in. Next actual video will probably be about Victor though. PSA, I need stuff about Victor. Please send me stuff about Victor if you have any thoughts or any feelings or anything. And also anything about Jace or about Echo's role in it or about Warwick and Sky and Cogs. Let me know, leave a comment. Would really love to understand the meaning that you guys see in it. If you like this video, support the channel on Patreon. Shoutouts to new high-tier patrons Pib and Torinosuke Ozawa. Thanks to all the people who helped me talk these ideas out. Thanks to Kamaya for the unhinged Arcane screenshots I used for the ad. Stay tuned for more Arcane content. I am not slowing down with that anytime soon. Hope you all enjoyed, and thanks for watching.